I'll never forget her face when she realized she'd chained the FBI director's disabled sister to a fence, I told the Congressional Committee. Karen Mitchell's HOA reign of terror ended that day, but what happened next was far worse. The room fell silent as I showed them the photos, my sister Sarah once again restrained against her will. But this time it wasn't amateur HOA thugs, it was professionals. Exactly 1 year after I brought down Karen's nationwide HOA corruption ring, they came for revenge. Sarah's frantic call had interrupted a national security briefing. Her voice trembled as she described men in suits delivering foreclosure notices, elderly neighbors suffering heart attacks from harassment, and the wind chimes, our symbols of freedom, being torn down house by house. "They're back," she'd whispered. "Different faces, same tactics, but worse." I was thousands of miles away when my security system triggered. The footage showed masked men entering my father's house. Sarah's terrified face appeared on video call. Before someone grabbed her phone, the screen went black, but not before I glimpsed what they'd brought with them. Chains. What they didn't realize was who they were really dealing with. And this time, I wasn't just fighting corruption. I was fighting for my family's lives. I cut my terrorism briefing short, much to the Joint Chief's frustration. "Family emergency," I explained, already heading for the door. 6 hours later, my security detail pulled into Oakwood Estates, and immediately I sensed the change. The neighborhood felt different, quieter, tenser, no children playing, no elderly couples walking dogs. The wind chimes hung silent in the still air. Dad's house looked the same, but the wheelchair ramp now had a giant orange violation sticker slapped across it. Inside, Sarah sat pale-faced at the kitchen table, surrounded by papers, dozens of violation notices, all bearing the same golden letterhead, Oakwood Community Partners, LLC. "It started 3 weeks ago," Dad explained, sliding a formal letter across the table. "Annual board elections were suddenly postponed indefinitely due to administrative restructuring." I scanned the document, my FBI training spotting 5 legal violations in the first paragraph alone. "Who delivered these notices?" "That would be Victor Chambers," Sarah said, pulling up a photo on her phone. "A stone-faced man in an expensive suit. Karen's nephew, recently moved in across the street." I glanced out the window at the house directly opposite, a property that had been vacant until now. Strategic positioning, clear sightlines into our home. Classic surveillance setup. "He's not alone," Dad continued. 4 new homeowners in the last month, all connected to the board. They've already replaced 3 committee heads. "But how?" I asked. "The FBI froze all their assets. Karen and her accomplices are still awaiting trial." Sarah wheeled to a filing cabinet, retrieving a stack of property records. Different companies, different names, but look at the formation dates. All established within weeks after Karen's arrest. "They were planning this while you were still gathering evidence. A contingency plan." I made a call to my office, requesting urgent background checks, then asked Sarah to continue. At first it was small things. New landscaping requirements, restrictions on exterior colors. But last week, she slid a medical bill across the table, $12,000 for emergency room treatment. "Mrs. Peterson," Dad explained grimly. "The widow with the rose bush had a heart attack when they served her with an eviction notice. Her granddaughter found her collapsed on the porch." My hands clenched. "On what grounds?" "Her roses exceed the newly approved height by 2 inches, Sarah whispered. "Non-compliance penalties accumulated to $40,000, the exact tactics Karen had used but executed more aggressively, more strategically. This wasn't just about money anymore. This was calculated intimidation." A knock at the door made us all freeze. Dad peered through the curtains, then relaxed slightly. "It's Barbara Johnston." I remembered her, Karen's former second-in-command, who'd turned informant. Dad let her in, But the woman who entered wasn't the confident whistleblower I remembered. She looked haunted, constantly glancing over her shoulder. "They threatened my children," she blurted out before even sitting down. "Said they'd make sure my family never felt safe again if I testified next month." "Who threatened you?" I demanded. Barbara pulled out her phone, showing us security footage from her front porch. Victor Chambers, speaking calmly while another man stood menacingly behind him. "They call themselves the Clean Slate Committee. They're finishing what Karen started, but smarter, more careful. No paper trails, no emails." My phone buzzed with a message from my analyst. Background checks on Victor and the new board members showed no criminal records, but something more disturbing. All former military intelligence with advanced training in counterintelligence operations and psychological warfare. This wasn't a simple HOA takeover. This was a professional operation. "It gets worse," Barbara continued. "They've scheduled a community-wide meeting tonight. Mandatory attendance or automatic $1,000 fine. They're announcing a neighborhood security initiative. Cameras on every house, monitored 24/7. Surveillance, control. The perfect setup to identify resistance and crush it before it forms." Sarah's phone chimed with a notification. Her face went ashen as she read the message. "Director Wilson, we know you've returned." The text came from an unknown number. "We look forward to making your acquaintance at tonight's meeting. We have special plans for your family." I looked out the window just in time to see Victor Chambers standing across the street, staring directly at our house, phone in hand. He smiled coldly, gave a small wave, then walked inside. They knew I was coming, I realized. Someone had leaked my travel plans. Someone with access to federal security protocols. The corruption ran deeper than I thought, reaching into my own organization. I had 6 hours until the meeting, 6 hours to uncover who I was really dealing with before walking into what was certainly a trap. The community center was packed by 7 p.m., tension thick in the air. I positioned my security details strategically, visible enough to send a message, but not threatening. As FBI director, I could have brought in tactical teams, but without concrete evidence, I risked looking like I was abusing federal power for a personal vendetta. Victor took the stage, flanked by 4 board members. His smile never reached his eyes as he spotted me in the back row. "Welcome, neighbors, and a special welcome to our distinguished visitor, FBI Director Wilson." All heads turned toward me. How fortunate that national security allows time for HOA disputes. That's when I saw them, Karen's brother and sister, seated in the front row. Family members I'd personally arrested, now out on bail pending trial. Victor continued smoothly. "Our new security initiative will ensure Oakwood Estates remain safe from outside interference. Cameras installed this week, monitoring of all visitors, and a special assessment of $5,000 per household effective immediately." Outraged murmurs rippled through the crowd. Refusal to comply will result in immediate property liens. "Any questions?" Mrs. Peterson's granddaughter stood. "This is illegal. You can't." "Actually," Victor interrupted, "I'd like to present our legal counsel." A man in an expensive suit approached the microphone. "Meet Andrew Coleman, newly appointed federal judge for our district." My blood ran cold. Coleman, nominated 3 months ago, confirmed last week. He'd have jurisdiction over any local, legal challenges. Judge Coleman smiled coldly. "I've reviewed the HOA bylaws. Everything proposed tonight is perfectly legal." The trap was springing shut. With a federal judge backing them, fighting this through legal channels would be nearly impossible. My phone vibrated, a panic alert from my home security system. On screen, I watched masked men entering my father's house. Sarah's terrified face appeared in a video call before someone grabbed her phone. The screen went black. Victor's phone chimed. He checked it, then stared directly at me with a triumphant smile. "Now," he announced to the stunned crowd, "let's discuss what happens to those who oppose progress." I bolted for the exit, but Victor's voice stopped me cold. "I wouldn't leave if I were you, Director. My men have very specific instructions if they don't hear from me every 5 minutes. He held up his phone. "Stay for the rest of our meeting, and your family remains unharmed. For now." The community room erupted into frightened whispers. My security detail moved closer, hands hovering near weapons awaiting my signal. "What do you want, Chambers?" I demanded, calculating response times for the nearest tactical teams. Victor's smile widened. "Justice. My Aunt Karen sits in jail because of you. Our family business dismantled, our accounts frozen." He pointed to the crowd. "And these people, these ungrateful residents, they celebrated her downfall. Hung those ridiculous wind chimes everywhere like victory flags." He walked toward me, each step deliberate. "But we're not vindictive people, Director. We simply want what's ours. The residents sign over their properties to our management company. You use your considerable influence to make my aunt's case disappear, and everyone lives happily ever after." I studied his face, recognizing the same calculated arrogance Karen had displayed. "And if I refuse?" Victor shrugged. "We have a dozen families under our control now, starting with yours." "Judge," Coleman approached the microphone, "let's be practical. Nobody needs to get hurt. These are simple property transfers. I've already prepared the paperwork." I glanced at my watch. 8 minutes since the home invasion. My security protocol would have automatically alerted my assistant director. Help would be coming, but not soon enough. That's when I noticed Mrs. Peterson's granddaughter discreetly filming everything on her phone. Several other residents were doing the same. Victor, focused on me, hadn't noticed. I needed to stall. "You've clearly planned this meticulously," I said, stepping toward Victor. "Military intelligence background, political connections, even a federal judge in your pocket. Very impressive." Victor preened slightly at the recognition. "Family business requires adaptation. Karen's methods were effective, but outdated, too visible. So you infiltrated my agency, learned my movements." "How?" He laughed. "Money still talks, Director, even in the hallowed FBI." The judge shifted uncomfortably, eyeing his watch. "Enough conversation. The documents, please." I caught the eye of Barbara Johnston in the crowd. She gave an almost imperceptible nod, then stood up. "Before we sign anything," she called out, voice trembling, "shouldn't we know exactly what happened to the original HOA funds, the millions that disappeared?" Victor's expression hardened. "Sit down, Barbara. Your family's future depends on your cooperation, remember?" But Barbara stood her ground. "The FBI recovered less than half of what was stolen. Director Wilson, didn't you ever wonder where the rest went?" I hadn't just wondered. I'd followed every lead, traced every transaction. The missing money had vanished through offshore accounts. Unless... The realization hit me the same moment Victor's face changed. Judge Coleman had been appointed 3 months ago, right when our financial investigation hit a dead end. "The judiciary confirmation process," I said slowly. "That's where the money went, buying yourselves a federal judge." Coleman's face flushed red. "This is absurd. I won't stay to be insulted." He turned to leave, but found himself facing my security detail. Victor's phone chimed. He checked it, then smiled coldly. "Time's up, Director. My men are getting impatient with your family." That's when the power cut out, plunging the community center into darkness. Screams erupted as emergency lights flickered on. In the confusion, I moved swiftly toward Victor, but he was already backing away, phone to his ear. "Execute Plan B," he ordered. The emergency exit burst open, not Victor's men, but my sister Sarah rolling in with my father beside her. Behind them, 3 agents in tactical gear. "Sorry we're late," Sarah called out, her voice strong. Had to take care of some uninvited guests. Victor's face contorted with rage. That's impossible. My men are currently enjoying FBI hospitality, my father finished, tossing a set of zip-tied handcuffs onto the floor. I turned to Victor, whose composure had finally cracked. You forgot something important about my sister. After what happened last year, she installed a state-of-the-art security system. The panic alert didn't just come to me, it went directly to our field office. The judge attempted to slip away in the confusion, but Barbara blocked his path. Going somewhere, Your Honor. I think the Judicial Review Board will be very interested in those offshore transactions you approved last month. Victor lunged for the main exit, but found himself face to face with my assistant director and a tactical team. Victor Chambers, I announced formally. You're under arrest for conspiracy, extortion, fraud, and attempted kidnapping. As agents secured Victor and the judge, I addressed the stunned residents. This isn't over. The corruption extends beyond what you've seen tonight. But this time, I looked around the room, meeting each person's eyes. We're dismantling the entire network, permanently. The lights flickered back on. Residents who had been filming the confrontation held up their phones. Triumphantly, Sarah wheeled over to Victor as agents prepared to escort him out. You know what your biggest mistake was? She leaned forward, her voice quiet but carrying in the silent room. You thought the wind chimes were symbols of your aunt's defeat. She pulled a small silver chime from her pocket, letting it ring softly. They were never about victory, they were a promise. That no matter how powerful you think you are, justice will always find its way home. As they led Victor away, his face twisted with hatred, I realized something crucial. The battle for Oakwood Estates was never just about property or money. It was about power versus community, fear versus hope. And this time, we wouldn't just win the battle. We would transform the war. 1 month later, Oakwood Estates wasn't just healing, it was transforming. The FBI investigation had expanded to 12 states, uncovering a nationwide network of corrupt HOAs, judges, and officials. Karen's original case had led us to something far bigger than we'd imagined. Today, I watched as residents gathered in our newly renovated community park, land that Victor had planned to sell to developers. Children played on accessible equipment while elderly neighbors chatted on benches donated by Mrs. Peterson's family. Quite a change, my father remarked, helping Sarah hang a new wind chime on the community gazebo. The biggest change isn't visible, Sarah said, gesturing toward the new resident board meeting happening under a nearby pavilion. It's in how people see each other now, not as violations to report, but as neighbors to protect. The investigation had cost me professionally. Stepping back from active FBI duties to testify in multiple cases wasn't the career advancement my superiors had wanted. But watching my sister lead the neighborhood's new accessibility committee made it worthwhile. A gentle breeze picked up, setting hundreds of wind chimes singing throughout the neighborhood. Their melody carried a simple truth. Sometimes, the most powerful resistance against corruption isn't federal investigations or legal battles. It's neighbors who refuse to be silenced.